Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 33 of Blue Leadership with your host, Dennis Nayor. Dennis is a 26-year law enforcement veteran and retired chief from the state of New York. He's also a proud graduate of the 240th session of the FBI National Academy and the 61st session of the FBI LEDA Command Institute. The Blue Leadership video podcast is brought to you by the nationally ranked Master of Science in Law Enforcement and Public Safety Leadership Program at the University of San Diego. You can learn more about the LEPSL program at criminaljustice.sandiego.edu. With that, I'll kick things over to your host to introduce our featured guest.
Maddie, thank you very much, and great to be here, episode 33. And today's guest is Captain James Nightingale of the town of Camillus Police Department. It's in upstate New York, about 30 minutes or so, maybe less, from Syracuse, New York. A little bit about the captain. The captain's got 26 years of law enforcement experience, second in command in his agency, graduate of the FBI National Academy. You'll see his brick in the background, session 279. He has his MS LEPSL, Law Enforcement and Public Safety Leadership Master's degree, a published author, lots more. Without further ado, Captain Nightingale, thanks for being the guest today.
Hey, Chief, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of LEPSL and the program itself. It's just fantastic, and just being able to share with your listeners and everyone else what kind of a program you guys actually have there.
Well, that's awesome. And one of the things we're going to talk about is you yourself. You're now an adjunct professor, and I know you recently published right on LinkedIn. You had your name on the door, and can you just tell a little bit about that for the listeners and viewers about how that came to be and how your MS LEPSL degree may have helped you propel yourself into now a teaching role yourself? And we'd love to hear that.
Yeah, no, thanks. Opportunity. Like everything else, I think I've always wanted to do something with teaching. My undergraduate was along with education, and been in the academy settings for years. And knowing that I needed to have a master's degree to really further that in academia and looking towards retirement opportunities, LEPSL came along, and it just really reignited that thirst for knowledge and to want to share with the cohort system within LEPSL. We all share it in discussion boards, and then outside of that, conversation, sharing text messages. As you know, this is really something I wanted to get into, and just an opportunity. They had an opening for an adjunct part-time professor at SUNY Oswego here in upstate New York, and I applied, and they gave me the opportunity to teach. I started one class. I started with another class, and now they're asking me back for the semester. So it's been an incredible opportunity. I'm learning every day from the students outside of them learning from me. We have such a diverse group. I've got a max class, 30 people. There was a waiting list to get into my class. So it's actually an honor to actually be able to sit in front of them and share experiences of law enforcement and really try to shape their views and ideas and their perception of what law enforcement is from what they see in our movies and Hollywood and TV and on social media. I think professionally and nationally, our profession has done a horrible job at educating our community and the public on what we actually do. And we've allowed movies and TV and Hollywood to do that. And I think people are pleasantly surprised when we do our citizen police academies and invite the community in, and they go, wow, we never knew it was like this, or we didn't know you guys did this. And we need to do more of that, to build that, take the bridge between the community and law enforcement together. And I'm kind of feel like I'm being able to do that, being in the school, in the setting.
So what course are you currently teaching? And what were the other, this is your third one.
So, last semester was criminal evidence. So I got to, as a crime scene tech, I've been doing crime scene work since 2002. And I really enjoy that. I teach with the Division of Criminal Justice evidence schools here in New York to teach cops to become evidence technicians to process. So it's been something for me. It's just been a great opportunity to know that little piece of evidence, that little bit of extra work you do in a case could actually solve a case that has nothing else to work with. So it's quite rewarding. And this semester I'm doing criminal investigations, in which professionally I spent 10 years as a detective and then became the detective sergeant for a couple of years after that. And spent a lot of time doing investigations. So it's right up my alley, the things I enjoy doing, and what gave me the most appreciation for my job and profession.
Interestingly, when I was working on my undergrad degree many moons ago, forensic science was one of the courses I enjoyed the most and was learning from. So it's good to know that whether it's called evidence or forensics, whatever it is, that's still alive and well.
It was interesting. When I started talking to him, there is a forensics class, but this was more so about bringing the evidence into court, how to process, how it's done. And I actually we did casting. I brought in fingerprint powder, brought in all kinds of different materials, and I let them actually play in class. They had an entire day like a lab. And they said even when the forensic courses they were doing, they weren't doing any of that. So it was getting them involved. And I think it was we received a lot differently than I had been in the past.
That's exactly how the course I took back in the day was designed, and for the same reason, you were connected. It was like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah, to see the look on their face to be able to lift their print off of a window, it was hilarious. It was heartwarming, just for them to think that, wow, that's really neat. There's nothing there. I can't see it because that's why it's latent. But then I developed it using these powders, and gee, that's such a process. Even though it's rudimentary to law enforcement, the stuff we see every day, for them, some of them has said, hey, it's kind of renewed my interest and maybe I want to do forensics. And we need a lot more of that. We don't have enough people doing that. So
very something interesting you said a little earlier. You said, that what portrayed about law enforcement in the movies is not the real thing. And that's why a lot of recruitment videos have really changed to show it's not all barrel rolling through windows and SWAT and all. That's a part of what law enforcement's about. But there's so much more community involvement. There's paperwork. There's boring aspects of the job that people don't realize. Actually, sometimes there's a lot of the job of working as a patrol officer in a big city to a small. But one of the things I think TV has done well, and they call the CSI Effect, is just informing the people about evidence and like DNA and mitochondrial DNA and all that. And I would love to hear your thoughts about that aspect of what like shows like Law and Order and Blue Bloods and things have done.
One of the things, the CSI Effect, we dealt with a lot when it first came out, right? A lot of our jurors were looking for evidence, forensics evidence, and they were shocked to think that we couldn't, because on TV, they would get all kinds of stuff. They could get a fingerprint put into a system and have an ID and an address and a blood type, and not all that stuff is what we really see every day. But I think the appreciation for it has definitely changed. I know law enforcement from our side of things touch DNA. Once that started coming out, man, we started doing so much more of that than we would actually do latent work, because we knew if we threw powder everywhere, we'd ruin that potential DNA sample. So we've been doing more of that because obviously DNA data banks have increased. Our being able to use 123 and some of the other those that are doing DNA to match up family members and everything else, which of course has been a court battle with being able to disseminate some of that information. But we know there's a larger group that we can now go through for DNA matching. So we've been spending more time with that. But it is definitely spawned an interest, I think, from a lot of people of what we can do forensically than before we never used to be able to.
Yeah. And like you said, it does change the expectations that, oh, you'll have this solved in 24 hours and you'll be able to get a matching DNA, off of a napkin, whatever. And so I think it's still some work to be done, but it's nice to know that it has sharpened the mind and the interest of people, especially in your class.
Yeah, it's been a great opportunity. I was just happy to be able to be part of it. I'm learning every single day on how to make it better and tweak it. And I asked for the kids, I know they told me that the school asked for a review. And I said, I would like, let's sit and talk. What would you like to see different? And we had a really good open conversation, and they didn't hold back. So it was good.
That's awesome. So what I'd like to hear from just more like a 30,000 foot view is leadership. What is it, your specific leadership view or philosophy? And what do you think the most important skill that a good leader should have? Because obviously you being an instructor, the number 2 in your agency, likely you'll be the number 1 when you're ready and when that time comes. So what do you feel is the most important skill?
That's like a big loaded question. They probably, one of the things that I think of the most is to to ask less and spend more time listening. You know, you really need to listen to what our cops are saying and what they're doing. You know, when we get to administrative roles, at times we get so caught up in the administrative function of the department and the mission and where it's going and operational planning. And then we tend not to listen so much to what some of the concerns are from our troops. And, you know, our mission is what it is, but if the cops don't believe in the mission, if the members don't, they're not going to work. You know, it's been said that especially with retention and recruitment, officers don't leave the job because the job is the same everywhere, right? But they leave the culture, they leave the leadership, and that's why they leave departments. So if we need to keep retention, I think we need to spend some more time listening to the needs of our officers, from the mental health side of things to everything else that might be part of their issues. But having empathy, compassion, it goes a long way. I remember having a conversation with my previous chief and talking about an event with my family. And 2-3 days later, I ran into him and he's like, "Hey, how did that event go?" That little question, I'm like, "Hey, he actually remembered that." That's important. And we can't get caught up on our everyday stuff as much. We need to spend more time, making sure that our cops know that we actually care about them and think about them. Those little things, just walking across the hall on a day they're getting slammed and say, "Hey guys, great work today. You guys really knocked it out of the park." It goes a long way.
Yeah, it's really that human element. And what you're saying also, I think, is the key. And the happiness and enjoyment a person will get from their work is when a place doesn't put process over people. Obviously, in law enforcement, it's really important to get the job done and process needs to occur. But when it's just process and there's no thought about how a person's doing, what's the wellness factor, are the officers burning out, do they have, the things they need to do the job? I think that's key. And I think you just really encapsulated that with saying it's really caring about the people.
Yeah, being authentic with your cops, sharing, even personal stories with them. Sometimes, especially on younger cops, they look up and they see the chiefs and admins and they see lieutenants like, all right, they're all the way up there, but we're human too. And we've lived through a lot of what they're going to be going through. And sharing that, I think, puts things in perspective for them, especially the way policing is today from where it was when we started over 20 years ago. It's very dynamically different. You look at some of the reforms and things, especially here in New York, we can go right back to 1829 and Sir Robert Peel, right? I mean, he set the standard of where it was back then. And yet his second most important thing he talked about was community policing. If the community doesn't believe in the job that we're doing, that we don't get the support of the community, we can't do our job. And that comes right back to what we're trying to do to get, our community more involved in what we're doing and us getting more involved in them and actually listening to what their needs are. So it's being authentic is probably one of the best things. I just believe that if they can trust you and they know that you're telling them the truth, and it goes a long way.
Yeah, and that's an intrinsic character and a level of emotional intelligence. And doing that, obviously, the transitions, I'm sure, for you, not just your officers, the students you teach, the community you serve. And I think that definitely goes a long way. And I'm sure that's why you're wearing that accreditation pin that people not from New York may not know what it is, but that pin, that yellow and blue pin at the top on your uniform, that's a huge distinction. And it means, actually, please share a little bit with the listeners and viewers, because I just know how important it was to become an accredited agency, and it would be great to hear from you.
Yeah, the accreditation we got back in 1998, and we've held it ever since. And it's a huge undertaking, well over 150 standards that we have to meet. They come in with auditors from New York State to take a look at all of our records. Obviously, some of the most important ones are our training records, right? Where lawsuits come from. And majority is a lack of training, failure to train, failure to make, supervision. So with all that, they interview our officers. They'll pick somebody right off the street and pull them in for an interview. They go through our evidence work, and it's important because the standard's there. And we have standards, right? With culture, we'll eat policy for breakfast. And if you don't have the policies, are only as good as if you follow them. And that's what's important. And being an accredited agency, we set that mark. It's not something that's made up, and it's good. It holds everyone accountable, ourselves, the administration, to make sure things are done the way they're supposed to be done and what New York State's requiring us to do. So it's been a lot of work. Every 5 years we get a big full program, but every few years our stuff has to be reviewed and be done, and it's been good.
Yeah, and just like I said off air, as a chief, that was one of my proudest accomplishments that my team and I earned, because like you said, it just shows the community you serve that you meet and exceed the best practices for policing. You have audits from third parties, making sure you're compliant with everything. You're continually making best practices your way of doing business. Your critical areas of force and evidence and training and all those things, they're covered. So it's that small pin means quite a lot.
Yeah, it is kind of nice. We used to have it on our cores at the time too, that we were an accredited agency, and to let everybody know, it was a proud moment for sure when we first got it. And I can tell you, we, after 3 months of going through it, and we were ecstatic to get it back again in the spring, of last year. So it was a lot of work and very rewarding. I know our chief went with our accrediting manager to Albany to receive the award. It's a big deal. It is. It's
awesome. Yeah,
very heartwarming.
Yeah, it brings back great memories. That is, and what I would love to hear is, you have done so many things in your career, and you keep growing, and you could just tell listening your energy. What career goals do you have left? I mean, and why? I mean, it's sometimes a hard question, because oftentimes you do the job and your promotion and rank is a byproduct of just loving what you do. Just kind of curious what yours are.
It's one of those questions that when you get asked that, you're like, wow, that's a good one. Where do you start with that? Career wise for me, yes. I mean, obviously there's opportunities for advancement, maybe being a chief someday, whether here or in another police department, to help with some leadership, wherever it may take me. On the training side of things, as I've been an instructor for a good part of my career, and a master instructor for New York State, and teaching in academy levels, I've always wanted to leave my profession better than what it was when I came in. And as leaders, it is such an important role that we take on, that those ahead of me, my mentors, my instructors that gave me the opportunities that I have to allow me to sit where I am with you today, I need to be able to give that to those that are coming up to the ranks also. We need to keep replacing that and have that vigor to want to do this job. I love it. People tell me all the time, man, why are you still doing it? I said, because I love going to work every day. Like I get up and I'm ready to go. And they're like, yeah, but look at everything we see on TV and listen to those, that's a bunch of noise. Like I relish the opportunity every day to talk to somebody new in the public, ask their opinion of our law enforcement, of our department, of their community. What do they need? If we could help them, if they could ask me one question, what would it be, and see if I could help them. That's where our differences are. We start doing that, opening up our departments. Last year was the second time in the history of our department we had an open house. We invited the entire community. We had an all hands on deck. Every police officer, every SPO, school resource officer, everybody was here. And we brought out everything, and we had food trucks and DJs and characters that from Spider-Man and Superman, and it brought all these kids in and opportunities to sit and talk with us, showcase what we do, ask us questions, and it was so well received by the community. They couldn't believe the things we were doing, what we were seeing. We gave them tours of the police department. People have never seen the inside of the working of law enforcement. They see it from the outside. They see that car that might be pulled over by a police officer. They have the opportunity to meet and talk with the chief, myself, and our lieutenant of the administration for 4 hours of a day is great. And what we'd like to do is try and increase that, right? How can we open our doors a little bit more, maybe every month for 2 hours, where anyone from the community can come in and bring, we can't maybe solve every problem, right, or every solution, but we can at least listen to what the concerns are. Part of that is just giving them a platform to talk, giving them an opportunity to air some grievances and some issues they may have, and hopefully get somewhat of an education too, to say why we couldn't do what we did. And I think that's what for me, career path, career wise, that's one of my most important things to do to leave this profession better. But I also am concerned about my cops. I'm concerned about the PTSD. I'm concerned about the mental health that we've been dealing with. As one of the only agencies in New York State that met the IACP challenge for the One Mind Pledge back in 2019. All of our officers from the chief down are trained in CIT training. It has really given us an opportunity to deal with the public in a way that law enforcement really is now having to deal with, where we never used to. And giving our cops an understanding that people are struggling. We don't know what everyone carries every day, but they also don't know what we carry. As a trainer, I'm really on the human performance side of things. The cognitive understanding of our job is a specificity of training in a sort, right? You have football players, a lineman isn't going to do the same workouts that a receiver is going to do because it's not specific to his job description. In law enforcement, we have a job specificity also, and we need to train within that. And we talk about firearms training specifically. It's something that we have every day. We hope never to have to use. But traditionally, nationally, we train our officers to shoot a paper that doesn't move and officers that don't move. And that is not specific to what our job description is, when in fact we may have to deal with that in an officer-involved shooting. In a national study that was done, we found that we have less than a 34% hit rate. That's not good enough. The public doesn't believe that that's good enough. And we as law enforcement, as leaders and trainers, shouldn't accept that either as a standard. 6 out of 10 rounds don't meet the mark. Not good enough. We really need to look at how we learn, understand priming is involved in that, understand that, even like through force science training that's out there, which really works on the human performance of law enforcement and understand that it is human performance. We can better ourselves by giving our cops training that is going to increase their survivability and the survivability of the community and their partners. And once the body can go where the mind's been before, and that's part of it, increasing mental, I want to say mental toughness, but our ability to know that if we are involved in something and have been injured, reality-based training, Chief, I know you did it. Let's say active shooter training, we teach them center fed and coordinate fed rooms and entries and all this stuff. And we use simulations. And you've been shot before. We all have. And we get that ouch. What happened? I hesitated. I got stuck. And we move on and make them redo it. And then they get through it and it's okay. But we never talk to them about, what if it was real? What if that was real and you got shot in the leg and you're bleeding out? What are you dealing with emotionally? And I'm not trying to get all, huggy and holding hands and everything else, but our officers need to have an opportunity to mentally prepare themselves for if that should happen. And we tend to wait until it happens and then do debriefs. We can't fix it afterwards. We need to somehow incorporate the mental toughness with the reality-based training to better our officers to be prepared for what they're dealing with emotionally and mentally with the job and dealing with PTSD.
Yeah, for sure. In that wellness component, it can't be a box to check or a buzzword. And I can see why that is a huge motivator for you, because let's face it, the life expectancy of a law enforcement officer is anywhere from 9 to 22 years less than the civilian counterparts. The things they see are not normal. You bring good people into the profession and to expect that they wouldn't be affected by the things they see, which is often not positive things, is crazy. The only thing you can do is try to infuse wellness in and be conscious of it, whether it's how you train, how the shifts are designed, noticing when someone's off and getting them help, destigmatizing counseling and EAP. Those are critical. And especially now we have a generation that's coming into the profession that it's not like it used to be, where it's all maybe a more of a hardened group that are all military, or, that old mindset of just, bite your upper lip and just move on. And I think what you're doing is key. And the fact that your agency met that IACP standard, and the fact that you truly care about your officers through the way you train and inoculating them from that stress that they would receive in their real life if it wasn't in the training environment, I think I think that's quite a motivator.
You know, the whole idea of reality-based training is to make it reality as close as we can, right? And as safely as we can. And I think part of that component we were missing was, okay, if it happens, what do we do? You know, and I think that's part of it. We also started talking about officer-involved shootings. If it happened, what is our policy? We actually asked them, hey, if you were interviewed right now, you had to give your public safety statement, what would you give? So we're actually getting them to start thinking about, instead of it happening, going, okay, what am I supposed to do? What is Garrity? We ask Garrity to officers, they're like, what's that? You know, those are some of the things that they need to understand, especially in this day and age and the way things are here, especially in New York, you know, and how the investigations go. It's important. It's important that they understand what they're going to go through. And with the mental health side, you know, I know we talked, you know, like leadership, like what do I follow? What do I do? And Chad Bruckner, you know, he's got a book on the Holy Trinity of Successful and Healthy Police Organizations, a book he put out. And I had read that recently. And I tell you, he had one of the things, I don't remember what chapter it was in, but it talked about, and some of the things we've talked about, culture, fairness, merit-based police departments, and people focused. So some of the things we've already talked about. And I go, geez, you know, it makes so much sense because we've gotten away from like civil service, right? Everything is about take a test. You got to be in the top 3. Is it necessarily merit-based? And people leave departments because they're like, you know, it's not a fairness standard. You know, Jim Glennon put out an article in Capital Press a few weeks ago, and he talked about the younger officers. When you talk to them, say, hey, I don't want to do more than just a minimum because there's no benefit anymore. Whereas before, we really used to benefit from being rewarded for hard work. And we need to kind of get back to that whole part of get the cops included in making decisions. If they feel they're part of the mission and part of the decision of our police department, they will hands down fight for that mission all day long. If we're fair, and obviously if we're fair with everything, that we're also being consistent in how we do, especially with, you know, internal affairs, you know, punishment, and keep things merit-based and keep working on being focused on people, I think we'll be able to retain some of those officers that might think about wanting to leave the profession.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, covering so many topics, we could talk on this literally for hours on our topics and then our topics having ancillary topics. But what I wanted to hear from you is, what do you think is the greatest challenge for law enforcement in this modern era? And what's the greatest opportunity that exists within it, in both sides of that coin?
Yeah, that's probably an hour's worth topic right there. You know, we could get into. If I was to pick, our greatest opportunity that we have is to get with our communities. We've missed it for so long, but really going back and kind of the conversation I started with is really bring our communities into our profession, into our family. Get back to that Paleo principle that talks about that. We are only successful as long as the community approves what we do. If they don't approve what we do, then we're spinning our wheels. And no matter what we do to try and bridge the gap between the community and the police department, it'll constantly be a gap there, and nothing will happen. I think it's one of the greatest opportunities we have. I think people are more willing to do that. Police departments are more willing to do that. The generation of cop we're getting is more willing to do that. I think our older generation of cops are hardened, and we're the cops. They're the people. That whole, you know, guardian versus warrior mentality. That's probably one of the things. For the other side of the coin, getting back to constitutional policing, it's a hot topic right now. Not so much to, I guess, it brings in that other side. We can't be so hardened that it's all about the law, but we also need to understand we have to have some balancing act with that. And in getting our cops to understand that too, we all want to catch the bad guy each and every day, but we understand sometimes that's not what works. It doesn't help fix the problem. But we do have to get back to law and order a little bit, understanding too that as long as it's a consistent justice is being done, I think that's important. That it is not arbitrary and it's unbiased, right? We We do the job that we're supposed to do because that's what the community entrusts us to do with that opportunity.
Well stated. And so we've covered so many things from teaching and education to training to, obviously what motivates you and where you still have passion for the profession. Leadership philosophy. Do you have a specific one and or any specific leadership podcasts or books that you think the listeners and viewers could gain value from?
Particular leadership style for me is just you look at those DISC assessments and things we always do in leadership. I fall right into that influencer, that coaching kind of person. I'd rather find a way to coach my way through and influence people through behavior, leading the way, show them the way if I can, help them get there, but see that they can do it themselves, right? They need to believe that we believe in them also, give them what they need to be successful. In terms of podcasts and some of the things too, like Jocko Willett, he Extreme Ownership, one of the books that he had put out, he talks about it. It's our responsibility to give our team what they need to be successful, right? And no matter the cost to our ego is one of his quotes, and it might be off quoted a little bit, but he says, "Welcome to leadership." That's what it is. So I think on the premise of that, it is trying to make sure that I'm never asking somebody to do something that I don't still do, haven't done, or continue to do. And I think they see that hey, the other day, and just for example, I'm carrying cones the other day for a DWI checkpoint. And so, hey, I got that, Cap. I'm like, no, I'm still a cop. I can carry my own cones, and one of the other state agencies that were there, they're like, "Jimmy, you're killing me." And I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "Because they're like, hey, how come he's carrying cones?" And they may not have. That's just me. I'm kind of wanting to get out there and do it and be with the cops and just let them know that I'm there to help. I'm not there for anything else I can do. Some of the other books and things, I try to read anything that will help with leadership. Margaret Heffernan wrote a book on willful blindness. That was an eye opener. Why we choose to, trying to remember her quote originally, but it is why we choose to ignore the odds at our peril. But we all have a willful blindness. You think about when things go wrong, something happens like, oh, well, I saw that coming. Well, how come we can see it coming, but yet still don't say anything? And it really put a lot of things in perspective of how we look at things, especially in leadership, because as a chief, I know you could pick out who that particular officer would be the one that you would have to deal with because they may have done or said something. And you're like, we knew it was coming, but maybe we didn't do enough at that time to make sure it didn't happen. Hope is not a plan. So we need to make sure that we work harder at making sure we do better with that.
Yeah, and I agree. I think good leadership involves good risk management, looking around the corner, knowing where A is going to lead not just to B and C, but all the way to Z and sometimes back, and also being courageous to deal with it. If you take on that leadership role, it's not about the title, it's not about the bigger paycheck or the esteem. It's about dealing with the hard issues and knowing they may not be pleasant, but if you don't, then you should step aside and let someone else do that job. I completely agree. And some of the success, a lot of the successes in law enforcement is exactly what you said. Being connected with your communities, caring about the officers that are doing the job day in and day out, and addressing the issues and doing the parts of the job that need to be done, and not having that willful blindness.
Yeah, I mean, Gordon Graham said it best, right? If it's predictable, it's preventable. It's one of his favorite quotes, and it sticks with you. It makes sense.
I love it. Maddie's going to come in and close us out. This has been an awesome conversation. I could continue talking at length on these topics and others. Captain Nightingale, thank you so much. We appreciate you being our guest on episode 33. Maddie, it's all yours to bring us home.
Awesome. Thank you so much. To Dennis and Captain Nightingale, thank you both so much for your time today. And to our viewers, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to meet the law enforcement heroes and leaders who are part of the MS Lepsel family. If you would like to watch previous episodes of Blue Leadership, you can find them on the video tab of our Facebook page or by searching USD Blue Leadership on YouTube. Thanks, everyone. We will see you next time.